The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days, turning the back roads into rivers of mud. Eli Turner was just trying to get home when he spotted a worn biker patch lying in a puddle. He didn't know its weight, its history, or the miles behind it. By the next day, 200 miles of road would bring the AFFA to his door. Before we begin, tell us where in the world you are watching this from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories. Rain hammered the windshield as Eli Turner eased his old pickup along the winding road toward home. The wipers slapped back and forth, barely keeping pace. He almost missed it. A small, dark shape lying in a puddle at the edge of the asphalt. Curiosity tugged harder than the voice telling him to keep driving. Eli pulled over, stepping into the downpour. It was a cloth patch, thick and heavy, its colors dulled by water but still bold. 2 crimson letters, AFFA, stitched in sharp detail. He didn't recognize the insignia, but it felt important the way certain things do without explanation. Sliding it into his pocket, Eli climbed back into the cab, unaware that this simple act would ripple far beyond his small, quiet town. Eli's life was simple but stretched thin. Raising his 10-year-old son, Caleb, on a mechanic's pay meant watching every dollar. That night, he set the patch on the kitchen table, drying it gently with a towel. Caleb wandered in, curious. "What's that?" Eli shrugged. "Not sure. Looks like it belongs to a biker club." Caleb traced the stitched letters with a finger. "Are you gonna keep it?" Eli hesitated. "I think it belongs to someone who'd want it back." He didn't know why he felt that way, only that the patch carried a weight. A story he didn't yet understand. Outside, the rain drummed on the roof like distant engines, and somewhere far off, riders were already learning where their missing piece had landed. The next morning, Eli brought the patch to his shop, figuring a customer might recognize it. Old Gus, a retired trucker, stopped by for an oil change and froze when he saw it. "Son, you found trouble? Or a family, depending on how you handle it." Eli raised an eyebrow. Gus leaned closer. "AFFA, angels forever, forever angels. That patch doesn't leave a man's vest unless it's ripped off in a fight or lost in something serious. You return it, you're showing respect. Keep it, you're asking for a knock on your door." Eli slid the patch back into his pocket. Trouble or family, either way, he wasn't the type to keep what wasn't his. He didn't realize the road had already decided which one he was about to get. By late afternoon, the storm had cleared, leaving the world washed clean and bright. Eli was locking up the shop when a rumble of engines rolled faintly in from the highway. He thought little of it. This road brought riders through all summer. But when Caleb called from the porch that night, Eli stepped outside to a sight that made him stop cold. For motorcycles were parked at the curb, their chrome catching the porch light, each rider wearing the same red and black patch, AFFA. The lead rider, a tall man with a weathered face, stepped forward. "You Eli Turner?" Eli nodded slowly. "I think you have something that belongs to us," the man said, not unkindly. Eli reached into his pocket, feeling the damp fabric still warm from his hand. The man took the patch gently, like it were more than cloth. "Name's Bishop," he said. "You just returned something that's been in my family for 20 years. Eli frowned. "Family?" Bishop nodded. "Brothers. Not all by blood, but all by choice." One of the other riders spoke up, his voice rough. "That patch came off during a ride we don't talk about much. Lost more than chrome that night." Eli didn't push for details, sensing the weight behind the words. Bishop met his eyes. "You could have kept it. You didn't. That means something." Eli glanced at Caleb, who was watching from the doorway, wide-eyed. "Wasn't mine to keep," Eli said simply. Bishop smiled faintly. "Good answer. We'll be in touch." The engines roared back to life, fading into the dark, but Eli knew this wasn't the last time he'd see them. 2 days passed quietly, the patch already fading into the background of Eli's mind. He figured the encounter was over, just a strange moment in a small town. But on the third morning, the low rumble of engines woke him before dawn. He stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, and froze. Not 4 bikes this time. 20. The street glistened under early light as riders in AFFA colors filled the block. Bishop stood at the front, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "We rode 200 miles, he called out, because a man who returns what's not his deserves to be thanked in person. Eli glanced toward Caleb, who was pressed to the window, eyes wide. "You didn't have to," Eli began, but Bishop cut him off. "Yeah, we did." The hum of the idling bikes sounded like a promise. Bishop waved his hand, and riders began unloading gear from their saddlebags. Eli watched in disbelief as boxes of groceries, tools, and even a brand-new leather jacket were stacked on his porch. "What's all this?" Eli asked. Bishop shrugged. "You showed respect. We're showing it back." One rider, a stocky man named Grady, handed Caleb a small helmet. "For when your old man teaches you to ride." Caleb's face lit up. Eli felt a lump in his throat. He'd worked hard to give his boy a good life, but moments like this were rare, when kindness came from nowhere, unearned except for doing the right thing. "You didn't have to do any of this," Eli said again. Bishop's eyes were steady. "We don't do half measures. Not for our own." The weight of that word, our, settled on Eli's shoulders in a way that felt both strange and welcome. As the sun climbed higher, neighbors began peeking from behind curtains, drawn by the deep rumble and flashes of chrome. Some looked wary, others curious. Eli didn't care what they thought. This wasn't about them. Bishop gestured toward the shop. "We hear business is slow." Eli raised an eyebrow. "News travels fast." Bishop grinned. "Roads got ears." Without further explanation, a few riders wheeled in crates. Spare parts, tools, and high-end equipment Eli could never afford on his own. "Consider it an investment," Bishop said. "You fix our bikes when we're in town, we make sure you've got work." Eli opened his mouth to protest, but the gratitude pushing at his chest won. "I appreciate it," he said, his voice rough. Bishop nodded. "We take care of the people who take care of us." Caleb slipped his hand into Eli's, eyes bright, as if sensing this moment was bigger than either of them realized. Later, over coffee at the kitchen table, Bishop shared the story behind the patch. Years ago, during a midnight ride through a storm, one of their brothers had gone down hard. In the chaos, his vest had been torn, the AFFA patch ripped away. They searched for hours, but it was gone. "That patch belonged to Ray Maddox," Bishop said quietly. "He's not here anymore. We lost him a year after that night." Eli glanced toward the patch, now clean and resting on the table. "So when I found it," Bishop nodded, "you brought a piece of him home. That matters to us." The room was silent except for the soft ticking of the clock. Eli realized this wasn't just a thank you ride. It was a way of closing a chapter, of showing that some things, and some people, are never truly lost if someone is willing to carry them back. Before they left, Bishop stood at the bottom of Eli's porch steps, the sun catching on the chrome of his bike. "This isn't goodbye," he said. "You've got friends on the road now. If you ever need us, you just say the word." Eli looked at the long line of riders, each nodding toward him like they meant it. Caleb clutched his new helmet, beaming. "Does this mean we're part of your club?" Bishop smiled. "It means you're part of our family. Club or not, that's what counts." The engines fired up, the sound rolling down the street like distant thunder. Eli stood with Caleb as the AFFA rode off, their colors flashing in the morning light. The groceries, tools, and jacket were generous gifts, but it was the feeling they left behind, belonging, that stayed with him long after the rumble faded. The days after the AFFA ride felt strangely quiet. The tools and parts they'd left filled the shop, making it look like a place with a future instead of one barely hanging on. Eli caught Caleb wandering through the aisles after school, running his hands over chrome and polished steel like they were treasures. "You think they'll come back?" Caleb asked. Eli smiled. "They will." He wasn't sure how he knew, but it felt certain. One evening, Eli spotted a single bike parked across the street, its rider giving him a small nod before disappearing into the night. No words, no reason, just presence. Eli realized then that the AFFA's gratitude wasn't a one-time gesture. They were watching in their way. It wasn't protection he'd asked for, but knowing it was there made the world feel a little less sharp around the edges. The first real sign of their bond came 2 weeks later. Eli was at the shop when a battered touring bike rolled in, its chain barely hanging on. The rider introduced himself as Hawk, a member of the AFFA. "Bishop said you're the man to see," he said. Eli fixed the bike without charging a dime, just like he'd done for neighbors over the years. Hawk left quietly, but a day later, a small envelope showed up in the mail. No return address, just 2 tickets to the local fair and enough cash for food and rides. Caleb's laughter at the fairgrounds that weekend was worth more than any paycheck. Eli started to understand. This was how the AFFA worked. You did right by them, they found ways, sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, to do right by you. Spring brought more riders through town, and Eli's shop became a natural stopover. Some came in for quick fixes, others just for coffee and conversation. Caleb soaked it all in, listening wide-eyed to road stories about storms, border crossings, and nights under endless stars. Eli noticed how the riders treated his son. Not like a kid to be ignored, but like a younger brother who might one day ride alongside them. One afternoon, Bishop rolled in with a sidecar attached to his Harley. "Figured the kid might like a taste," he said. Caleb's grin stretched ear to ear as Bishop strapped a helmet on him. They rode around the block twice, the boys' laughter echoing all the way back to the shop. Watching from the doorway, Eli felt something stir inside him: pride, gratitude, and the quiet certainty that his small act in the rain had started something that might just last a lifetime. Not everyone in town understood the connection. Mrs. Hargrove, who ran the grocery store, pulled Eli aside one day. "Those biker types, you be careful." Eli smiled politely but didn't bother defending them. The people warning him didn't see the groceries on his porch, the tools in his shop, or the way Caleb's confidence had grown. That night, over dinner, Caleb asked, "Why do they call themselves AFFA?" Eli thought back to Bishop's words. "It stands for Angels Forever, Forever Angels. It means they take care of each other no matter what. Once you're in, you're never out." Caleb nodded, absorbing the meaning. "So we're kind of like part of it now?" Eli looked at him for a moment, then said, "Yeah, I guess we are." And the truth of it felt as solid as the rumble of their engines in his memory. One rainy afternoon, much like the day he'd found the patch, Eli was closing up when he saw a familiar figure in the doorway. Bishop. He stepped inside, shaking off the water, and handed Eli a folded piece of fabric. "Thought you should have this," he said. Eli unfolded it to reveal a smaller version of the AFFA patch, the same design but with a single word stitched below: Honorary. "You're not on the roster," Bishop said, "but you're in the family. This means no matter where you are, if a brother sees it, you're covered." Eli didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. Bishop clapped him on the shoulder. "You gave something back to us that we can't put a price on. This is how we make sure you know it matters." Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside, Eli felt nothing but steady warmth. The honorary patch sat on Eli's workbench for days before he decided what to do with it. Finally, one Saturday morning, he stitched it onto the inside of his denim vest, over his heart. He didn't want it to draw attention. It wasn't about showing off. It was about knowing it was there. When he wore the vest, it felt like carrying a quiet promise. That weekend, Caleb noticed it while helping in the shop. "That's the one Bishop gave you," he said. Eli nodded. "Means we're never alone out there." Caleb smiled. Then I'll wear mine someday too. Eli laughed. One day, maybe. But deep down, he knew the road had already chosen his son, just as it had chosen him that rainy day. Summer arrived, and with it the annual AFFA memorial ride. Bishop invited Eli and Caleb to join, offering them a spot in the middle of the pack. Eli borrowed a sidecar so Caleb could ride safely. They set out at sunrise, the engines a steady chorus as the miles rolled under them. Along the way, riders shared stories about the ones they'd lost and the ways they kept their memories alive. At the final stop, everyone dismounted in silence, facing a long row of vests draped over chairs, each belonging to a fallen brother. Bishop placed the original patch Eli had found on one of the chairs, his voice low. Brought him home. Eli felt the weight of the moment and understood more than ever why returning it had mattered so much. Caleb squeezed his arm, sensing the depth of what they were witnessing. Back in town, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Eli's shop thrived, not just from AFFA's business, but from word of mouth that he was a man you could trust. People who once eyed the bikers warily began nodding at them in the street, slowly understanding there was more to the patch than noise and chrome. One evening, Caleb sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "Dad, do you think we'll always know them?" Eli thought about the long line of riders, the groceries, the tools, the honorary patch, and the way the road had brought them here. "I think once you know people like that, you don't ever stop," he said. The sound of a single Harley drifted through the warm air, and Eli smiled. Not because he recognized the bike, but because he didn't have to. A month later, a stranger on a worn Yamaha stopped by the shop. His chain had snapped just outside of town. Eli fixed it quickly, refusing payment. The man hesitated before leaving. "You sure I can't give you something?" Eli shook his head. "Just pass it on when it's your turn." As the Yamaha disappeared down the road, Eli realized how natural the words had felt. That night, Bishop called. "Heard you gave another piece of the road back," he said with a chuckle. Eli leaned against the porch railing, watching fireflies blink in the yard. "Guess I did." Bishop's tone softened. "That's how the circle stays unbroken." Eli thought about that long after the call ended, feeling the truth of it settle deep. On the anniversary of finding the patch, Eli and Caleb took a short ride together. Just the two of them, sidecar and all. They stopped on the same rain-worn stretch of road where he'd first spotted it. The puddle was gone, the day warm and bright, but Eli could still picture the patch lying there, waiting for someone to notice. Caleb asked, "Do you ever wish you'd just driven past?" Eli shook his head. "Not for a second." They sat there for a while, listening to the wind in the trees. Then Eli kicked the engine to life, the rumble rolling through the quiet like a heartbeat. As they pulled away, he thought about how one small choice in the rain had given them something rare. A family built on respect, loyalty, and the promise to never ride alone. A single act of respect turned a rainy roadside find into a lifelong bond. Eli didn't just return a patch, he found a family. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, and ring the bell so more tales of loyalty, honor, and the open road find their way to you.